to Crypto Clothesline. We're glad to be here with you. Hanging out the crypto laundry. Getting all the crypto info for you. Crypto Clothesline. Crypto Clothesline. Here comes the money.
Here we go.
Here comes the money.
The money season on Crypto Clothesline podcast.
We have as our guest today a super interesting person, and potentially people might think it's an unlikely guest for the money season.
One of the best use cases I've ever seen is using blockchain technology for disaster relief, because it creates trust where it matters the most. So as you know, I was in Ash Wednesday, so the bushfires in Victoria, and I was at a point where we could not leave. So there were no roads out. There was just me and my partner. Yeah, it was really scary because there was no other way to get out. We could not communicate. So the power and the phones were out for days, and we only had like a tiny sort of water tank, so we didn't have a pump. We didn't have any electricity. It was really scary. And in the bushfires, there were around 200 people who had died. But after the bushfires, of course, during the bushfires, it was very, very traumatic, and there were a lot of lives lost, and it was traumatic, and it was scary, and it was terrible. But after the bushfires, there was all this relief that came in. So there were people who sent money, there were people who sent goods, there were people who came up from interstate and, firefighters, and they were delivering all this stuff. But there was all these government agencies that came up. There was Centrelink, there was police, there was just all of these people who came to help, but all of their systems were completely over the place. So every person who had lost their home was given an immediate payment. Some people had received it, some people hadn't, some people said they hadn't, and on the record it said that they had. It was just a mess. And obviously that was in 2009. So, if we had blockchain technology, imagine how effective it would have been, using smart contracts. It would have been simple, just an algorithm embedded in the whole system, so all of the parties had to stick to rules. They could have. And I think that's what some people are doing at the moment. But for Alison, she's been collaborating with other people in the blockchain and crypto space now. So Stephen and Thomas, and hopefully they can use blockchain and crypto to help in all of the the projects that she's doing, because I feel like it's so important to get blockchain into disaster relief.
I really think it was a very powerful evening. We discussed it in the interview, but the Women in Blockchain event, where the three of them were present via live stream, and the three of them were kind of having a fireside chat with all of us watching. It was pretty interesting about, okay, what are your needs? So she would list what her needs were, what she needed in the field, but also, like money or this or that, honesty. And then they were able to sort of, in a heartbeat, kind of tailor how technology might be able to answer some of those calls. And a lot of it was blockchain related, but a lot of it was, they started to discuss the holochain and different ways that, technological development of blockchain, sort of blockchain 201 or whatever you'd call it, could actually perhaps answer her needs more efficiently than the current blockchain. So that was interesting as well, just to look that technology is moving so fast. And even somebody in her situation, as she mentions in the interview, it's very, very primal. Like, it's stuff that human beings have needed all their lives, but how current day technology might be able to answer the call to make sure that it's kept so that she's getting money, that she's, one of the things I don't think we touched on in the interview, but talking about registering identity on the blockchain so people are not potentially being lost into human trafficking. And the third application being the transparency of use of funds, so that somebody like Alison can say, hey, this is what we spent the money on that you sent us. We've used your money to buy this, this, and this, and how refreshing that would be as a contributor of funds to be able to see that your money has meaningfully reached the mouths of the people that need it, whether it's medicine or food or educational supplies or whatever it translates to.
Yeah, we had an interview with Bonnie Yu about natural disasters and people who go through natural disasters over and over again, and they've never have their original documents because it's all in paper. So that's the case all over the world in so many countries. They're still using paper. And even in this country, one of the cases is like you go and you buy a dog and you have to fill out like 8 different paper documents. You cannot do it electronically. It's bizarre.
And I had this big run-in with my my telco yesterday. You're going to love this. It's just one of our usual stories. But like, I get paid monthly, yeah, and I get paid on the 19th. But I happen to join this telco on the 16th. This is like 18 months ago, okay?
Oh, yeah.
And every month they want me to write them an email saying I'm going to be 3 days late with my payment. And I have said to them, could you just move my direct debit date back by 3 days or forward or whatever, depends on your perspective.
Yeah.
Because then I won't be late every month. And I get nasty letters and I get mean texts and I get reminders and I stick with them because they're cheap, to be honest. But I just said to them, hey guys, don't you think it's time to get out of the 70s? Like, we've got coders. We've got someone who could write you some code and just make it really possible so that you're increasing customer satisfaction and service, which might be a little bit of a strange concept, but you know, like, you've really got at least one disgruntled customer monthly. So I'm supposed to either call them. I can't believe it. I've either got to call them or I've got to email them. Otherwise, I risk a $22 late fee payment.
You could not possibly be the only one.
I know. And it's that premise, and it's a bit based on our legal system that you're guilty until proven innocent. Like, yeah. Okay, I had heaps of problems with my internet. Over the space of 4 months, it was driving me insane. So finally, so they went troubleshooting and they got the NBN guys out. That didn't work. Then they replaced my router. But the thing is, I had to pay for the router.
Oh, God.
And then when they received my old router and they could prove that it was faulty, then they would reimburse me the funds. I still haven't seen a cent. I sent my router by registered mail 2 months ago, and they're claiming they haven't received it. And remember that conversation with Lucas Cullen. And he said, if these organizations were on the blockchain, then it wouldn't be our word against them. It would be simply, hey.
It's fact. Yeah,
it's fact. It's on the blockchain. It's a contract. We can see it. It's a yes/no answer. It's a binary thing. There's no gray area. So I haven't. Anyway, so this just went on, and I wrote a doozy of a letter, and then I said, and I've had to spend an hour of my life writing you guys this letter. So back to what we were talking about. Yeah, it would be amazing if we could engage people like Stephen and Tom to be able to create real world applications of tech that helps people help people.
I think they're definitely keen to do that on Holochain. If anyone's interested, their interviews with Stephen Alexander and Thomas Miller will be in the money season, if they haven't been already.
Yeah, we haven't decided the order, so you might be hearing this and you might be looking for their interviews because we're still being a bit random, aren't we? We're still being we're doing the best we can with the resources we've got. But once we've listened to everyone's interviews, we're going to collate them into some sort of logical order. I think that works in a much more organic way as well. We don't know what we're going to talk about with different people. Well, that brings us to the reason that we're here. Welcome to Crypto Clothesline.
Our show is about helping women join the blockchain wealth revolution for themselves and for their families.
Our names are Amy Rosegoodey and Abiti Catherine Pass, and we're speakers in blockchain and crypto, and we're on this mission.
We're learning together with you, talking with leading experts in the space, exploring cutting-edge technology projects that are shaping the future for our children.
This podcast is for intelligence and growth, and our values are for peace, harmony, and collaboration on the planet. So our guest this week is Dr. Alison Thompson. She spent the last 20 years volunteering and being part of humanitarian aid in many crisis situations around the world, both as a result of natural disaster and also man-made crises. So most recently, as we mentioned, she's been working in Haiti and she's been working in Venezuela. She's also been working a lot with Syrian refugees. But this all started when she was living in New York and she heard some commotion at the Twin Towers. And she basically talks about, in the interview, putting on her rollerblades and heading down there to see what she can do. And she realizes, and I had never heard this before, this is her first time, I've never heard her share this before, but there were over 65 friends of hers who were crushed in or killed in that disaster, and 23 of them she counts as close friends. So really heart-wrenching. So from then onwards, she went ahead to create Third Wave Volunteers. And we're talking to her about currency of the heart.
Let's have a listen.
Let's have a listen. Welcome to Crypto Clothesline. Today we're speaking to Dr. Alison Thompson, a full-time global humanitarian volunteer. She's run large refugee camps, resilience hubs and field hospitals in most of the largest disasters around the world for the past 20 years, including September 11, the attacks in New York, the 2004 tsunami in Sri Lanka, and other places like Haiti, Philippines, Nepal, including the Syrian refugee crisis. She's currently also working in Venezuela. Wow, Alison, welcome, and can you tell us a little bit about your work and how you got to be in this position?
It all started September 11th, 2001, and I woke up really early, and they said a small plane had hit the building. And I'd worked on Wall Street as an investment banker with IPOs years earlier, and so all my friends were in the building, so I just knew I had to get there. So I threw my rollerblades on and rollerbladed downtown as fast as I could. And as I got towards the World Trade Center, I saw these people coming at me, kind of like zombies with cell phones to their ears, but no one was speaking, and they had white soot on them. And there was a lot of injuries and blood on people and that. And then went down in a little further, and it was really, really smoky, and saw someone lying on the ground, and I went to help them. And after 5 or 10 minutes, I heard this great rumble, and I looked up, and it was the World Trade Center right above me, collapsing. So I just rollerbladed up the street as fast as I could, dived under a truck, and just started praying. And then half an hour later, I crawled out, and everything was pitch black. And that had been a really blue, sunny day. So I just started walking around, and I just started walking around. And then, noticed body parts and things. And then there was this cop who was pushing everyone north. So we all went to the city hall. And then an iron worker got on his car and said, look, does anyone have any medical training? Go over there. Anyone have any building military training? Go over there. So they divided us all up and ended up, long story short, back into ground zero. Like it was just undescribable. Like a great beast had just opened up the ground and just scorched everything in its path. And I just stood there wondering what to do. Ended up living in the streets for the first 6 days, and then later on 9 months, just collecting body parts, washing out firemen's eyes, or just doing whatever I could do, knowing that a lot of my friends were in that building. Later on, I found out there were around 64 of my friends that had died, and 23 of my close friends. We were working in there, and then FEMA, the professional group that was supposed to respond to disasters, came in, and they kept asking us to close down. They said, thank you for your work, you've done a good job, but it's time for you to leave because the professionals have to take over. We kept looking at them, and we'd look back down, and then we'd just work on another 50 firemen and washing out their eyes. And they came back a second and a third and a fourth time. And on the last time, they began to say, we need to leave. But then they looked at each other. They covered their badge and said, please stay, that everyone's needed. And that's how my volunteer organization was formed. Our motto is everyone is needed. And those FEMA agents put humanity first, and they know that the old aid manuals didn't work anymore. So basically, since then, I've been in every major disaster around the world. The next one was the 2004 tsunami, where I ended up running a field hospital and a refugee camp and rebuilding a village. And then it went on to many, many disasters after that, from Haiti, 2010 earthquake, and the Syrian refugees, and many, many more disasters. And what I have learnt in there, it's not just medical needed. You land and you've got 10,000 orphans. You need mums and dads and singers and bankers and lawyers and all types of people to get in there, because pretty much running a refugee camp is like many other skills, like being a teacher. Okay, we got all these people without food, water, and everything. What are we going to do? And it's all about setting up a plan, a basic plan day to day, and going from there.
We've spoken with other people who have been involved in disaster recovery, and they've mentioned that perhaps cryptocurrency could aid in the disaster recovery plans. Can you tell us, how can cryptocurrency help in what you're doing? I mean, can cryptocurrency and blockchain aid in all of your efforts, or are you using it at the moment?
We're a charity 501c3, and what I've learned is the 501c3 charity model doesn't work anymore. It's outdated, always begging for more money. And, big programs are set up, and then that money runs out. So we were really excited about Bitcoin and also cryptocurrency, and we made an alliance with a cryptocurrency firm here in the USA. And, to begin with, I feel like they did really want to set out to do something good, and they actually came with us on some trips. And they made all these promises to the locals that they were going to do solar panel systems and all sorts of things like that. And then pretty much in the end, they didn't give us what they said they were going to do. They raised money in our name and gave a tiny little bit, but all that money that they raised in our name of doing good and collecting other people all over the world to join their currency, they didn't follow through, and we've never even heard from them again. So I got burned, but I'm ready to jump back in, because there's always a bad one amongst everything, so.
Well, at least you sorted that one out at the beginning. You can move on to better people.
Yeah, that was what was really strange about the Wall Street Journal had been calling me. They really wanted to do a story on it, because they had so many ones that didn't work out, that they had stories on that were, that weren't doing too good. And they were really excited to do a good story on the Wall Street Journal about the cryptocurrency that we'd formed with and everything. But I had to call them back and I said, I'm sorry, it's just not working out.
That's such a shame, because it just sounded like such a feel-good story. It sounded like it was just a good feeling waiting to happen.
I was just excited to find another way of raising money. And I'm still looking for that. I'm still ready to jump back in.
Just before I ask you the next question, but related to what you're saying, we did have a fabulous Women in Blockchain evening in Perth recently, where you live streamed from Miami, and people in the audience were able to ask you questions, and it really generated a beautiful heart feeling in the room. But we also invited in some people that Amy Rose introduced me to just 24 hours before this event, Stephen Alexander and Thomas Miller, and they were speaking at length about potential ways that technology could help the work that you're doing. And that's kind of a work in progress. And we're a bit of a not just chatting, but hopefully an action taking party, so that we can actually get some of those things realized.
What's important about the tech guys discussing this, like when we're out in the field, there's a lot of good field people that want to go and help with their heart and all that. But we need business people to align with us and have strategies. And so it was so important to have those tech guys on, and we're going to follow through, and we're going to make a love token or a karma token that we can really move forward and raise money and do some good.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it.
Alison, could you expand on a love token or a karma token? So it sounds a little bit like a new form of currency, I guess, because I've spoken to Tom and he's very much into this sort of thing. And you had a conversation with him. I wasn't able to make it. Can you tell us about what these other tokens are?
Well, we're still beginning to design this love token, but it's open to everyone.
Some of the things, we played around with some concepts that night, and what's really cool about Stephen and Thomas is that they, as you know, Amy Rose, we interviewed them, and even some of the concepts they have are so they're talking about creating ways of making intangible things like honesty and love and kindness measurable, aren't they? I mean, Stephen was talking about doing that via an app, and that he was going to be going to London to teach students about that sort of thing. So I'm not entirely clear about it yet. It is definitely a work in progress.
Well, it can be summed up in this quote that I say. It's, you don't have to go shave your head and chant on a hill, but imagine a world where we all do our part, that the karma banks are overflowing with blue chip stocks of compassion, and we are all billionaires on the inside. And I think that's the way it was originally meant to be. So why not, inspire people to be better people, honesty, kindness, love, and all that, because that's what wins in the end. You can't take the money stuff with you, and it comes down to family and love, and that's it.
I noticed that night, there were some beautiful discussions that took place, and there were people tearing up. But it was that actual quote that I heard you speak about in your TED Talk, and I'll put your TED Talk in the show notes so people can access it. And I've been sharing it far and wide because I just love it, and it was very inspiring. And you spoke about that thing about the blue chips and being millionaires on the inside, and it really struck a chord with me, because we are so busy chasing money on the outside. We're so busy, we lose time and energy and positive experiences perhaps with our families and children and whoever we're connected with, because often we're just on this crazy race trying to keep up with the machinations of society. And we'll go down the whole conspiracy theory soon. We won't go there. But it really touched me, this whole idea of being able to transact from the heart, transact in terms of love. And when we do something for someone else, sometimes we think we're giving to them, but actually what we're receiving in terms of a feeling of fulfillment and belonging and that joy of being able to give is far greater than any bank account, balance. Can you talk a little bit about that from your experience in the field?
An example of that is in Haiti. I'm sitting in some of the most dangerous slums in the world, and I'm sitting by a little creek, and it's full of cholera and pigs and sewage and everything. There was a little poor girl. She had a tattered, kind of like a wedding dress on, but tattered and really poor. Didn't have any parents. She just lived in the gutter. And we sat down and she started playing with my hair and plaiting it and singing sweet little songs, little church songs and everything. And I was like, you know what? This is the best spa in the world. No money could ever buy this. It just sat, she's singing in my ear. I wasn't able to give her attention for the months before because there was usually 100 kids, but now she had me alone singing. And it was just such a soothing moment. And I said, I would not trade this for any money in the world. And believe me, I like my 5-star spas and all that sort of stuff as well. But there's just no price on this, the experiences we have. And oftentimes we go and with our big world ideas and the money and everything we in the different disasters. And they say, it doesn't matter about that. Just the fact that you came from the other side of the world to listen to us and you see our pain is so important. So that's what I've learned. And after disaster, all this material stuff just goes. It gets tornadoed away or hurricaned away or anything. And it's just individuals hugging and holding each other that really I've found is the most important thing. Don't get me wrong, we do need money to do what we do out in the field, but in the last 20 years, I really haven't had much, and I've had to find alternative ways to do it. And I'm still a very happy person.
Alison, another left field question, but I'm really intrigued by you. You mentioned you worked on Wall Street like a long time ago. And did you, as soon as September 11 happened, was that like when you had an epiphany or something and then you moved to the more humanitarian lifestyle? And if that's the case, could you tell me about how you transitioned from what seems like a really corporate lifestyle to this beautiful, giving, nurturing, and, just a life of integrity and really amazing work?
I've had many variations of my life. When I was in New York, I was kind of like jet setting around and going on safaris in Africa. And I was working on Wall Street for a few years and IPOs. And the transition, I don't know I guess it was gradual, but it's also shocking of the September 11th day, knowing that my friends were buried alive down there. And I had conversations with animators and filmmakers and all sorts of different people in different jobs. And everyone just felt like stupid, like it didn't mean anything anymore. It was meaningless. And everyone was, you'd see the funerals every day in New York. People wear black in New York as it is, but you just knew it was the black car for the funeral. And day after day, and just in one investment bank alone, they lost over 600 people. So it was kind of sudden, but it was an epiphany when the FEMA guy covered his badge and said everyone's needed. But then it was more gradual going into it, because I worked down there for 9 months. But then when I went back into filmmaking, which I was doing at the time, then next disaster, boom, full time. Because I realized it's just general skills that we all have, and all the jobs I've had my whole life, from, nursing paramedic to math teacher to investment banker to film director, they're really all these skills that add up. So when you're a humanitarian, you can sit there, you can actually send some footage back and raise the money on your friends from Wall Street. You can help in the hospital and help set the hospital up to attend to wounds. You can teach some kids out the back. It's all these skills. It's really kind of like being a mom or a teacher. Psychology of all these different things going on. And you can't think too far ahead. You have to just think of what do they need? Food, water, shelter. Okay. And it's common sense things like, oh, I saw a place inland that wasn't destroyed. Let's go and get some stuff. So it just built day upon day. And then now I think I have the best job in the world because I'm really happy on the inside. I don't have a lot on the outside, but that's enough. And that's so that full-time humanitarian doesn't mean a goody two-shoes. I like to have my red wine here and there and things like that. But it just means if I can do it, anyone can do it.
So has your idea of currency and money changed then from back then when, you had all these jobs, but they're I'm imagining you now, it's really, you're quite a different person than you were back then. So your idea of money back then, can you explain maybe what your thoughts were, especially as an investment banker, and how you see the future of money?
Money back then, New York is a very expensive place. So you're on the treadmill and everyone is on the treadmill. We've got to pay this, we've got to pay the gym membership, we've got to pay this and pay that. And now when I look back, when I'm out in the field, I've learned this thing. I don't know, it's something about the universe giving back, or if you believe in God, the universe, whatever you Buddha, whatever you believe in, it's something's out there, because I'd learned to give away my last $10 to a villager, thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to eat and pay the guest house? But then weird, like the next day, someone would send $100 and say, don't spend it on the people, you use it for you. Or a church would turn up and secretly go to our guest house and pay it for 6 months and pay our food for 6 months. And things like that just kept happening and happening. So I really believe when you're doing good for other people and you put your heart and everything out there in an honest way, the universe does open up and it gives back twice-fold. And I just keep relying on that, and I keep doing it, and it's working. I know we are at the stage, we also need to raise money, but it's really, I'm not saying I'm raising it for myself to buy things. It's really for the people out in the field. And I guess I have come 180. I never really thought about that till the question.
Because that was one of my questions that I was going to ask, because at the Women in Blockchain event in Perth, you mentioned that you haven't drawn an income for the last 20 years. And later on, I was reflecting on that going, well, how's she paid for everything? I wondered if you had like a stock of cash in the back room there that you could use, or how that worked. But I think you've answered my question.
And over the past 20 years, like I have written a book, so I got a little income there, or, certain little things. I go and speak at universities and colleges and businesses in New York and around USA. So I get a stipend for that here or there, but it's really small in between. But out in the field, which that's where I am, we live out of the aid box. It's okay if you're living in a tent and you're helping, 70,000 refugees. If you have a few, boxes of soup or pasta or whatever, that's how it all works. So I haven't had to pay a rent or do all that sort of things. Things, did get quite a bit harsh, when you couldn't afford tampons and things like that. But there was always a way around that.
And so Amy Rose was asking too, I don't know if you already answered the question and I didn't hear it, but what do you see the future of money being?
The future of money, I think, is how it began in the beginning, with trading with the beads and everything like that. It's Bitcoin or the cryptocurrencies, and it's decentralized person to person, because it's just not working. Look at everyone starving around the world, and the top percentage has this amount, and everybody. And I know that people donate so many millions to all these big organizations, but it doesn't get to the people out in the field. Imagine if we could cut that out and go directly to people. We go so far in the future in technology, but we have to keep one foot in the past, because they're inventing all these things to do rescues, but that all goes down. Computer, cell phone, everything, and we really have basic wire and solar light and things, and battery flashlights and torches. But I think it could be similar to that. Yes, we're advancing to create these new decentralized ideas, but also I think it should go back to how it was in the beginning.
And also that notion of the village. I mean, I this is big in my heart because I'm raising 3 children, and Amy Rose is the same, but that whole notion that it takes a village to raise a child. And I think in the 50s, we kind of got stuck in that nuclear family model, and we're all quite isolated from each other, but we really need each other as humanity, as community.
Absolutely.
Alison, you've obviously had to deal with like other people donating and maybe even some scrutiny into where money goes. Are you investigating, or do you consider using blockchain for transparency reasons when it comes to your charities?
Absolutely. Transparency is the most important thing for our organization. If someone donates, they get a receipt, they get a video, and they get photos of exactly where those solar lights or whatever we're distributing goes. And I think it's that's so important, and that's why a lot of the big organizations are stuck, because they spend so much time having to prove where it went, or the transparency, that they just can't, their hands are tied. And that's a big important part of it for us, one of the most important parts. So introducing Bitcoin would do that for us.
And I think it would also give people the opportunity to be able to send currency straight to you, not having to go through third parties where bits and pieces are getting chipped away. Bits and pieces of the money are disappearing down the mouth of somebody else.
Yes, and even when we do all our fundraisers and everything, they take so much percentage of what you raise. It's not fair. That money should be going straight to the people.
Usually when I imagine donating to a charity, I think food, clothing, water and shelter. But the little things that a lot of us don't really comprehend are things like energy. And solar lighting, I have little bits and pieces at my house, but that is so important.
Oh, absolutely. I'm very much into renewable energy, and we've come across these solar lights. They're origami, and they fold up flat. They're the lightest ones in the world. And then they fold out to this big cube of light that lasts 8 to 12 hours, and it lights up a whole room and then just recharges in the sun. And so far, they're lasting 6-7 years. So we're really excited about these. They're only $10. Beautiful. They're made out of sailcloth. So with the Syrian refugees, when they were landing in Greece, they land at night. There's 100 people in a boat built for 12 people, and they're upturning, and then there's parents and kids and grandparents, and people have wounds. And when they land in Greece, they have to walk 38 miles up a steep hill in the pitch black to a refugee camp, which has no lighting. So we started giving these out along the shores, and the kids can carry them up the mountains. You'd see these little lights going up, and it's a little box of hope, but it's such a game changer. I'm just so excited about these, because before we never raised money. Third Wave Volunteers was about a donation of time. Your time is enough. But then we started doing the solar lights. So that's what we mainly raise it for, these solar lights and small water filtration systems. So we've been using them in all the back-to-back hurricanes of the last 2 years. We were in Puerto Rico, was out of electricity for 11 months. The whole island was down. So we started giving these door to door to door, because we don't just send it off in a box. We make sure that it gets to the person. We look them in the eye and we say, we care about you. We love you. So we did over 100,000 of these all through Puerto Rico, and the word got around, and everyone was calling, all the mayors, and everyone was calling, please, we want more. So we just see the difference it makes in people's lives with 1.6 billion people without electricity and light. So our goal is to light up the darkest areas of the world.
Oh, wow, that's so beautiful.
Can you talk also could you talk about the hugs? Like you talk about insisting on
oh, yeah.
I'm using the wrong language, but you talked about hugging people and not letting go. When they drop the hug, you still stay there.
So when we go door to door, people are traumatized. They've lost family members, or they've lost their whole house, and they're just sitting there kind of in shock underneath a tarp or a tent. And we go up to them, and we grab them and we give them a hug. And they give a kind of a general hug, and then they go to pull out, but I don't let them. I pull them in tighter towards me, and I hug them really tight. And in those next few seconds, you feel their whole body release, and they just sort of start to sink in your arms. I'm just crying thinking about it. And then they just start to cry and let all that frustration out of the last month or the last 6 months or the last 9 months. But that's just as important as delivering that light. And we sit with them and we just listen. And that's our main mission, is to love and listen, and just to give people hugs as well. It might sound a little kooky, but it really works.
So just very final thing, what is your favorite quote? What's your favorite saying or your mantra that gets you through on those dark nights when you're having to walk up those hills and you're freezing cold and there's all sorts of people that need your help? I mean, when you're in your darkest moments, what's a quote that gets you through?
It's easy to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, but it's leadership to be in the wrong place at the right time.
Is that your own quote? Is that your own?
Yes, that's my main quote. Well, I've got lots of quotes.
Goosebumps.
But everyone's needed. Everyone's needed is my a quote.
Yeah, that's beautiful too. I'm seriously covered in goosebumps. What about you, Amy Rose?
I don't know. I think we've just made a new bestie.
Yes.
And we've all got names that start with A, just to be completely random.
Triple A.
And if, depending on what goes on in the 2020 elections, I may have to move back to Australia because it's so horrible over here.
Sure.
All the hatred and everything has really affected me. It's
Oh,
really affected me. But I'll go to Perth, I think.
yeah, please. We'd love, love, love. Like, I just want to set up a big community and all help each other. I just keep sending that out there.
Where,
So, yeah.
where are you from, Alison, in Australia?
From Sydney in the bush. And then my parents were missionaries all over the world. So I was grew up different parts of Asian parts all over. That's why I feel comfortable living in third worlds and because I run around with local children with bows and arrows and things. So that's pretty normal for me.
That's
so
awesome.
but Sydney was a good base.
Wow. And that would also explain, I mean, like in terms of, I know for myself, sometimes if I think about myself and taking my family into a crisis situation, I actually feel scared. I want to help, but I feel scared about what I'm going to see, how I'm going to feel, how I'm going to cope. And I even worry about how my kids would cope, because I imagine they'd get some level of trauma too, just from that shock. And
well, the kids are great usually. You think that, but they get there and they start playing with the kids and they realize they're all the same. It's just play. And the kids are great and they're usually really honest. And that when we ask them, have you had aid? They'll say, no, miss, no. And the parents would just lie to us. All the adults have learned all this trickery. We have to get back to be more childlike, to laugh and be honest and trust. And that's what I look for every day is for that. But you think you can't do it, but then you get your plane ticket, get your return ticket, jump on the plane, get there. If you're traumatized, jump on the plane and leave the next day and go sit at the bar back home. But, nobody ever leaves. They don't, and all these volunteers, I've never had anyone leave. Kids are amazing. Like we had some 14-year-olds up in the Florida Panhandle, the Hurricane Michael recently, and they were our best volunteers, So you think you can't do it, but when you get out in the field, it's same with body collecting. I love body collecting because I get out of the hospital, I get into the jungle and that, and people say, oh, I could never touch a body. But then, when you can't when you're sitting back home, but when you're in the field, you got gloves, you got a bag, you're like 1, 2, 3, lift, and then that's it. You can do it, but you have to be there.
wow, that is bizarre. I mean, not bizarre. I'm not being negative, but that is like.
Sorry, I'm off topic.
No, not at all. It's awesome and it's real and it's juicy. But I've got these kind of visual images, and I'm like, whoa. I think it's because we all live such sanitized lives over here.
Yeah.
Have you watched the Third Wave
Oh,
film?
I haven't yet, but I'm going to put it in the show notes. Where can we get that?
Yeah, I'll send you.
Yes, please. If you could send me the link.
Went to Cannes. Sean Penn took it to Cannes. We had a presidential jury screening. We had Bono, Sean Penn, everybody walked the red carpet with us. Michael Moore was next to me in the theater. He was crying his head off. And it was just an amazing time going from a refugee camp to the Cannes Film Festival. And yeah, so that's a film you can watch. It's about the 2004 tsunami and how 4 volunteers go off with $300 and end up staying for years and years, rebuilding a village and creating a tsunami warning system. So it's interesting. The locals rise up against us because they hear the billions of dollars don't get there and they think we're building homes in Switzerland and that. But so they try to kill us and all this stuff, but in the end it all works out.
Oh my God. How have I not seen that yet? I did see Sean Penn. I did see Sean Penn in various of the TED Talks things and photographs of you with him. So that's pretty inspiring. Well, famous bestie, Amy Rose, not just a bestie, but a famous one.
Sweet hookups. Alison's got sweet hookups.
Yeah. I got some good stories to tell, but I don't think I could tell them on a podcast.
Well,
lots of juicy stories.
When you move to Perth, we'll do dinner party 101.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I got some juicy ones. Okay.
All right, my love. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It's been the most refreshing version of, an episode in the money season.
Thank you. And I think I picked up my Australian accent again.
You definitely have. I didn't actually think you were anything other than Australian, but thank you so much for joining us.
Ross Ulbricht is serving a double life sentence without parole for all nonviolent charges for creating a website. Please help free this peaceful man. Go to freeross.org and sign and share the petition.
Well, wasn't that so sweet? I love the way she said that she felt that she could trust us because we were women and we were Australian. I don't know if that's sexist and racist and everything put in together, but my heart was pumping.
And I think she's just a sweetheart. And you know what? I wouldn't blame her if she wants to come home because she's just been everywhere. And like everything that she does, she must need a break. I mean, you go on a holiday and have an amazing time and you come home and you need a break. Imagine going away for like 10 years and non-stop helping everybody and being in natural disasters and that sort of thing. Like, she needs to come home and just have a little bit of R&R, I think.
I think too, she was intimating about the state of American politics, and she said, depending on the elections next year in 2020, it may dictate whether I head back to live in Australia, because she said it's just getting so horrible here. And if you look at some of her TED Talks and things, she talks about love, and I know it's a very overused word, but she talks about humans being there for each other. There was a video footage where there were some people and they were threatening to kill her because she had helped medicinally. She had given medical aid to the enemy, right? So there's a conflict going on. She's in the middle of it. She drew this diagram, and none of them spoke English. So she was basically in a cage with medicine in the cage saying, these people want to kill me. That's what they're saying. Mm-hmm. And she drew 2 circles and she said, this is a human being. This is you guys. This is a human being. These are the other guys. This is one group. This is another group, but you're both human beings. I think she drew 2 squares, and then she drew 2 lines from the squares coming down to one circle with a little stick figure person. And she said, we're all human, and a heart. We all have a heart. Like, I'm not against you or I'm not with you. I'm here to help humans. And that's another unspoken aspect, I think, of this volunteering work, where she gets drawn into the jealousies and the anger and the conflicts of the actual humans that she's there to help.
Well, that's their whole world, though. You know, they're living in that every single day. And I would say that if there's conflict in a war, or if they've lost everything and friends, how can you shift your mindset to trust people and risk further loss?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, she walks around with that little bandana with a red cross on it. She's kind of got that whole Swiss thing, I think, of just being neutral. I'm just here to help everyone. I'm just here to help humans. But man, it's a tough gig. I mean, she was in tears in this video. I don't know if I can find it again. I've just been trawling, looking through a lot of her material, because it's super inspiring. And it's also part of some of the project work we're doing as a family towards both sustainability and human generosity. Because I love the idea, you know how she spoke about the solar puffs? How cool is that?
And how they've delivered, like, how many millions? 100,000 or something?
Oh my God. And they're made of shade cloth, and they're foldable. They light up. You just pull. She showed us at the other evening presentation we had. She just popped one open and it automatically turns on. It recharges from solar energy. I mean, we should all have them, but especially people who have no electricity and no light.
It should be like a lifeboat on a ship. Every community should have a bunch of them ready.
So I was super touched talking to her. I loved it. I love that she's part of our money season and enthusiastic to do more work. I'm counting this as my voluntary contribution, even though sometimes the Clothesline feels like it's voluntary. Oh, God. When Moon Lambo. I think I'll join the Moon Lamboers, because I could handle that.
Well, I think it's really good to note that she said that everyone is needed, and that's really important, because I think that a lot of the time we second guess ourselves, and we have that inner demon that says, oh, no, you just let other people who know what they're doing do it. But you need everybody to jump on and help out. And I can say that from actual fact, like, after a disaster, nobody's head is screwed on properly. Just everyone's mind is elsewhere. Like, you know, people who lost everything, though. Everyone is needed so that we've got a few full human capacities going around.
In her TED Talk, which I'll include in the show notes, but she talks about the fact that there were these mothers and they're really frustrated because they couldn't get in there at that ground level and help out. And so she said, you know, they had kids and stuff like that. So she goes, so what they ended up doing is these mothers would be lined up at the periphery of the ground zero area. I think that's what it's called, the area where, and firefighters would be leaving, and these mothers would just be grabbing these firefighters and just hugging them. That's what they did. They hugged people. Oh, it's so touching. So they were like, man, I've got too many kids. I can't come in and help. You know, I've got to be here for my kids. But boom, meeting humans. I mean, that's so much what we need more of.
Well, I heard an amazing quote today from She's on the Money, a lady who is Australian, but she's in the UK, and she's all about women getting control of their own finances. So I follow her on Instagram, and one of her posts today, which was really cool was a strong woman stands up for herself. A stronger woman stands up for everybody else.
Oh.
So I thought, yeah, it's really quite applicable.
Oh. Well, my love, what a touching and moving interview today.
Yeah, I think we might have a little bit more to do with Alison as well in the future, particularly if she's keen to hardcore blockchain crypto for third wave.
All right, well, until next week.
Okay, ciao for now.
Crypto Clothesline.